as Secretary General of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. We are thrilled to welcome, all the way from Quito, Ecuador, having taken a 40-hour flight just to meet all of you, former President of Ecuador, Her Excellency, Dr. Rosalía Arteaga.
We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's true. We make a
Wherever you're
better
comfortable.
day. Just you and me.
Our next guest, born in Kyrgyzstan and educated in Russia, held a position as Soviet Foreign Minister in the 1980s and later rose to Deputy Prime Minister. After Kyrgyzstan gained independence in 1992, she became its first ambassador to the United States and later to United Kingdom before being elected to Foreign Minister. She now serves as the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Afghanistan and head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, providing crucial aid and support to the region. Please join me in welcoming from Afghanistan the first female Central Asian head of state, former President of Kyrgyzstan, Her Excellency Roza Otunbayeva.
So they know that someone cares and their lives will be stronger and free as God has shown us.
Our next guest, born and raised in Auckland, has had a distinguished career as a lawyer and judge. He served 2 terms as Parliamentary Ombudsman, beginning in 1995, and later chaired the Commonwealth Foundation for 2 terms until 2016. Appointed by Queen Elizabeth as Governor General of New Zealand, he was the first person of Indian origin to hold this position, serving from 2006 to 2011. Currently, he serves on the board of various universities and is Chancellor of the University of Waikato. We are delighted to welcome from New Zealand, GNZ, QSO, KSTJ, His Excellency, the Right Honourable Sir Anand Satyanand.
And so we all must lend a helping hand. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones to make a brighter day. So let's start giving. Oh, there's a choice we're making. We're saving our lives.
To moderate this distinguished panel, we have someone who is currently serving his 4th term as a Lok Sabha MP, a former chairperson of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs and Information Technology. He has held positions as Union Minister of State for Human Resource Development and Union Minister of State for External Affairs. During his nearly 3-decade-long career at the United Nations, he served as Under-Secretary General under Kofi Annan. Known as India's finest public intellectual and author of numerous books, he is, in the words of Rishabh, the most benevolent man and good human being I know. Please join me in welcoming and giving a standing ovation to our very own Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
When you're down and out, and there seems no hope at all.
But if you just believe, there's no way we can fall.
Well, let's realize, oh, that a change can.
Great to see you all here, I.I.M.U.N. Wonderful. Well, they've given us a very interesting topic for these 3 distinguished former heads of state, which is how do we build a roadmap to a global village? Now, the global village is a concept that goes back to the early 1960s when the Canadian sociologist Marshall McLuhan talked about how the world was becoming more closely knit together. And it became even truer a couple of decades later as we did get connected through satellites, telephones, ease of jet travel, and in due course, of course, the internet. Now people can zing billions of dollars around the globe with the press of the button, You can call your loved ones and see them on the screen for free on a WhatsApp call. There's all of these possibilities that make us one village. And yet, are we really a global village? Or have we seen? I was listening very attentively to my good friend Admiral Robin Dhawan when he talked about all the geopolitical changes that we've seen in this century so far. But one that he didn't talk about was the pushback against globalization. When the century began, everyone took globalization for granted. It was inevitable, seemingly irresistible. Everyone said, it's here to stay. Borders were dissolving, sovereignties mattered less and less. Essentially, Davos man became the symbol of the new globalized world. And then what happened? We ended up, by 2008-9, when there was a major recession, with the beginnings of a backlash against globalization. In the second decade of the century, it actually got worse, as more and more countries elected leaders who were busy asserting their country's national sovereignty. Admiral Dhawan mentioned the Brexit and the exit of the British from the European Union. We've seen President Trump talking about making America great again and embarking on a trade war with China. We've seen very assertive nationalist postures by the Chinese, by the Russians. You've seen something very similar in our country, a reassertion of a certain version of nationalism. And then when COVID struck, all of this came to a head, and people forgot all their globalized rhetoric. They immediately became entrenched behind their own borders. Even the European Union, which is supposed to be a poster child for the global village. What happened when the first COVID cases surfaced in Italy? All the other European countries, even though they were part of the Schengen visa arrangement and they're supposed to travel freely, they immediately closed their borders to their European brothers to the south, the Italians. Suddenly, all this talk of the global village seemed to melt away behind fences that each country was putting up. Even when a vaccine was invented, or several vaccines were invented, countries started buying and hoarding them for themselves. When the COVID pandemic was over, even a country like Britain ended up throwing away literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of surplus vaccines that were expiring, that they had hoarded, rather than supply them to potential COVID sufferers in poorer countries in Africa or elsewhere. So is the global village truly a village, or are we all living behind different fences? That's my first question to our distinguished panel. And if I may start in the same order as our moderator did and ask you, Rosa, whether you'd be kind enough, Rosalía, to tell us, in your view, and sitting in Latin America, we sometimes feel you're a bit far away from our country here. Tell us whether you feel that the global village is still going strong or whether there is a major threat to it.
Thank you, Shashi. Good evening to everybody. Buenas noches in Spanish. I am very happy to be here. And before to answer the question of Shashi, I want to say that I am very thankful for the invitation that I received to participate in this vibrant meeting. And I want to share to you that when I was a teenager, almost like your age, I started to be interested in India because I read some books of Rabindranath Tagore. And I was so enthusiastic about coming to India that when I finally realized my dream and I arrived to India, I must say that I fall in love with India. I fall in love with the spirituality, with the kindness of the people, with the geography, with a lot of things that it's not easy to describe. But when I received the invitation and thinking about what could happen in this globalized world. Shashi talked about the global village. I was thinking about, because I read a lot, and I was thinking about a sociologist from Canada that he started to talk about global village. And when this conquer of the space with a satellite put in there by United States, an early bird, I was thinking about how communications have globalized the world, because we knew exactly what happens in different sides of the world, like nowadays when we were watching at the same moment that it happens the Olympic Games, or knowing, unfortunately, what's happening in Ukraine or in Gaza or in different parts of the world. And we are familiarized with the actors of Hollywood, but also with Bollywood actors and actresses. We said it's a global world. But also when we see what happens with the big banks, with the big companies, when something happens, for example, in the United States or in other parts of the world, we feel that the economy is very linked. Then we have a proof of globalization with the economy, with the communication. But most now, with some other aspects like science, when we feel that COVID pandemic was globalized, we also have the response from different parts of the world making the vaccines in teams from people and scientists from different parts of the world. That's globalization. And of course, when we talk about what the Admiral says about climate change, the oceans, how it is happening, the anthropic aggression against the environment, we feel that it is global because something that we do in our highlands of Ecuador. Ecuador is a very small country in Latin America, in South America, but we are blessed because we have part of the Amazon jungle, we have part of the Andean mountains, we have coast to the Pacific Ocean, and we have the Galapagos Island, where Darwin discovered the theory of the evolution of the species. And when we did something wrong on that side of the world, it could affect, because, for example, the water that is produced in the mountains of the Andes go through lots of mountains to the valleys and arrive to the Amazon, the big river Amazon. And the Amazon goes to the Atlantic and impact the coast of Europe and impact the coast of the United States. Then it is a global impact. Then globalization is there. But what happens with us, the common citizens of different parts of the world, the girls and boys of India or from Ecuador? We feel that what's happening around has to be with our identity. Then the local issues are very important. But we have, as local citizens of our communities, or Mumbai, of Quito, of different sides of the world, we feel that we need the respect of the others. That is our identity, our religion, our values, our cultures, our sports. That is the local world that is always present in each person in the world. How we can manage in this globalized world the local feelings, how we can handle it, how can we live with this ownership, this sense of identity with the globalized world. And I'm very happy when I read something that Rishabh Shah was writing about the glocal, because I had been working in this glocal that is a neologism because it's a new word, but also a new concept since the last decades. And I find that the solution to confront this globalization and to live in a good way, preserving our identity, is the local approach. To feel and sense local, but act global. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we live in between 2 billion countries, India and China. So we hope that each of us will have a role to play. I think it will be very important to build first peace and prosperity in this close neighborhood and have a close relations with such giants like India and China. So I do believe that global village starts from close neighborhood. And then, of course, all of us, we obliged, or we do connections with Europe, with America, and so on. So you are my direct neighbor, and we should really have very close partnership. My country is 7 million only country, and
it's a small Indian city.
exactly, Uzbekistan 37, and Afghanistan is 37 million countries. But today, thanks God, we have our possession, knowledge. A lot of Indian students come to our countries to study medicine. We are very close to each other. I was so happy to come to Mumbai and to see the flights Mumbai-Tashkent, for example. It means that it is not too far from each other. This is the village, look, this is one global village. And I do believe that in the future, probably, not in the future, now, your professional associations sometimes to come to our countries to do the annual events, because flying from Delhi to Bangalore, it is another 3 hours. To Mumbai, probably 3 or 4 hours, right? And to come from Delhi to Tashkent, it is only 2.5 or 3 hours. Why not to go to another country? So, I mean, all this closeness, all this neighborhood, it is part of the global village. I'm not talking about the high patriotic, globalistic ideas. Look, these young people, I deal with Alfia, young girl, her understanding, her dedication to this organization, it's so high and so inspiring me. And I'm sure that all these young people, they do have very high inspirations. I want to tell you, global village in such a complicated world. Admiral here has spoken eloquently about all the complications of the current world. And I do believe that we should live regardless of religion, regardless of race, regardless of all, despite of all the problems, we should live in peace. And that's how the global village will be strong and prosperous.
Thank you, Rosa. Let me turn to Sir Anand Satyanand. Sir Anand, your grandparents migrated from India to Fiji. Your parents migrated from Fiji to New Zealand, and you became the head of state of New Zealand. So we've seen a tremendous depiction, as it were, of the closing, in some ways, the disappearance of borders in the course of 3 generations in your own family. And one might argue you should be a poster child, the first citizen of the global village. And yet, I was also reminded of Theresa May, the former British Prime Minister, saying, if anyone thinks he's a citizen of the world, he hasn't understood a single thing about what citizenship is all about. So you've got that pushback as well. that citizenship is about being rooted in your own country. How do you feel now? Are you a cosmopolitan global citizen with your roots all over the place? Or have you become a Kiwi who sees the world from that corner of the Antipodes?
I'm a proud, born and raised New Zealander. And yet, because of my grandparentage and parentage to which you have referred, I'm also proud of my Indian heritage. And I feel at home and enthused by being in the company of so many young people who are the future, not only for this country, but much further afield. And the link point is that I am a member of the diaspora. And it is only, ladies and gentlemen, 22 years ago that this country turned its head towards the 20 to 30 million people of Indian origin living overseas, and who decided to welcome all of those people to come to India, to experience the modern India, to invest in it, and to make friends. And that Pravasi idea, of which I have been part, and my compatriot from New Zealand at this conference, Priyanka Radhakrishnan, we have both received Pravasi awards because we have taken part in public life in our country and are known because of being of Indian origin. And so that is for me an important part. I have this duality. I look like many people in the audience.
Yes.
I'm even dressed like some of them today, but I am a proud and essentially New Zealand person.
Does that mean you believe in the global village?
Well, no, I want to speak a little about the global village, to say that I am agnostic about the notion of global village, because I can think quite readily of one or two examples of global village ideas that have faltered. I think, for example, of the movement towards Esperanto, which rose in the late 1800s, whereby people decided that if there was a common language with common ideas and ethics, that would be the way in which the whole world would get on better. However, we know that the Esperanto movement has passed its centenary. It's even got to 150 years, but even the most generous person would say that Esperanto has faltered. The second example I would like to bring up briefly relates to the guru of the mid-20th century, Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian academic who went to Cambridge University and who developed this idea in the age of radio and television, that the medium was the message, and that by being part of the media, being engaged with the media, that this would lead to a global village which would be to everyone's benefit. But we all know, don't we, that radio and television have become, even Doordarshan, have become a little bit old hat. And today, we live in the age of social media, of TikTok and Instagram and Zoom and Skype and all of these means of communicating with each other, and that may be said by some people to be in the 21st century a pointer towards a global village. But my rejoinder is that looking at the history of the examples that I have raised, that the notion of the global village being successful has got a big question mark about it. And the link point to end what I want to say in answer to your question, Dr. Tharoor, is I.I.M.U.N. I think that this organization has, over the last decade plus, made a wonderful start of energizing the thought and the ideas of young people and engaging them in participation. But I think, and I join those who congratulate I.I.M.U.N. in their endeavors. But I think there is a big distance to go before any notion of a global village becomes viable. But I leave my thought and leave all of you, ladies and gentlemen, with a challenge, which is particularly appropriate to raise on today's day, Independence Day in India. And I want to leave a challenge that, to my mind, was very eloquently expressed by someone who has been said to be the father of independence, the father of the modern India. And I'm not referring to Mahatma Gandhi, I'm not referring to Jawaharlal Nehru, I'm not referring to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, I am referring to B.R. Ambedkar. The man who came from the most humble beginnings in this country, but who had an acuity of thought and an application towards achieving things that gained him doctorates in this country, in the UK, and in the US, and with a superb legal brain, he was at the centerpiece of the framing of the Constitution of India, and at the time of independence, he was referred to time and again as the father, And it is the challenge that has been raised by him that I would like to leave with you, I.I.M.U.N.ers, in 2024. B.R. Ambedkar said, to proceed, you must first educate. And there is room for that to occur within your organization. You must secondly organize. And having done that, thirdly, you must then agitate. That's the challenge that I leave you.
As we turn to our next round of questions, this distinguished panel, I do want to point out they've all been in government in one form or the other. And I'm very curious about one thing. All governments are fundamentally accountable to their own people. So when Mr. Trump, who seems again to be on the march towards the White House, when he won the last time, part of his appeal was to voters who were objecting to the fact that what used to be their jobs had been shipped off to Shanghai and Bangalore. How do you respond to the charge that when you are, as a political leader, responsible principally to your own people, that your emphasis on global village or globalization would actually perhaps hurt your people and benefit people in other countries? How did you, for example, Rosalía, how did you cope with this question of globalization in Ecuador?
Well, it is not an easy question because, of course, when you are a leader of your own country, you have to think first in your citizens, especially in the young people, because they are not only the future, they are the present of the countries. And well, it is different when you talk in a country like India with such a role that was described before, and to think about what India is going to do in this century, being like a balance between the powers that you have very close, defending democracy, defending values. That's such an important mission. And in other hand, we have a country like my own country, a small one of the smallest in Latin America. It is all the population of Ecuador is like Bombay population. And of course, we deal with a lot of situations that are part of the global world. For example, nowadays we are fighting with violence that we never had in my country, narco violence, the narco guerrillas going against not only my country but against Latin America, and taking the young people like prisoners of this violence and this situation. Then what can I say? What can I do to my own people fighting against these foreign influences that are damaging the people? And what we can say in other countries, like as I said in India. Then, of course, I found the response in the local vision, and I have to go back because it's not only global like President Anand Satyanand said. It is a fact, not the Esperanto, not some situations that fail in the world, but if you see really very back immediately with the pandemic, it is a global situation and global response. I have been an educator most of my life, and I feel a big compromise with the students in all parts of the world. But I also know that we have some kind of response. Is this the response of artificial intelligence? I was some weeks ago in China, and I was talking with entrepreneurs that are creating platforms to teach the small kids. And I said, well, but the relation with the parents, the artificial intelligence is doing that. The evaluation is doing that. And I say, what happens with teachers? And the response was, we are thinking that it's better for education, not for educators. And I have a compromise with teachers. And I feel that only the values of the spirit are going to save the planet, are going to save the future generations. Only the values of the spirit. Then we, the adults, have to talk more about values, but not only talk. We have to show in our behaviors how we can conduct our own life and how we can impact in the others. That's a big task for students, for teachers, for parents. And another challenge, because we are nowadays in a world of science, very giant steps in science. And in terms of global warming and others, we think, is it science that is going to save us? Which is more powerful, science or conscience? That's my question for you, the audience.
Great. Roza Otunbayeva, you are currently working in the global system, but having served in your own country, would you not agree that governments are principally accountable to their own people? So global values that Rosalía talks about are all very well, but ultimately, if your policies in favor of a global village are not benefiting your own people, if things they used to make in your country are cheaper to buy from China, so your factories are shutting down, how would your people feel about that? Is the global village not under threat from this increasing consciousness of, shall we say, the need for self-reliance rather than outsourcing everything to other countries where things are cheaper? I'm sorry, was it not audible?
No, very, very difficult to hear.
Oh, I see.
Right. You're talking about the global values.
She was talking about global values, but I was asking a more basic question. about things like jobs and goods, that when you create a global village, if it is cheaper to make something in China than in your country, and therefore the factories in your country shut down and your own people lose jobs, won't they turn against you? Isn't your duty first to your own?
Look, we are
population?
surviving towards to giants, that's for sure. As you know, my country is transit country for Chinese goods to Russia, to Kazakhstan. Yeah. And so we are full of those Chinese goods, no doubt about this. I think in India also you have, right?
Yes, yes indeed.
Yeah, no doubt. But you Indian also soon, you are the third economy, and it means that you would compete, right, on the world market. No, for sure.
In some areas, yes.
For sure. So, this is really a big challenge. I would not say threat, but challenge, because all of us who live in open world, we are the member of WTO long ago, since 90s of the last century. So it means that, of course, we can't compete with China and European goods. Absolutely no doubt about this. But the problem is, it is also a problem of security. And I work, as you know, now in Afghanistan. And when everyone says that Afghanistan is still a threat to the region, it is not completely true. Afghanistan is engaged with each problem very much. This year it will be the 4 years as Taliban government came to the power. And I would say that for us, for the Central Asian countries, for Russia, which has a southern border via Central Asia with Afghanistan, this matter of security is the most important today. And a lot of all sorts of plots about this. But in fact, Afghanistan is really trying to make its country, and Taliban so far so successful. I mean, they are keeping their currency on the same level. Of course, poverty is there, problems are there. So I think when we are talking about the global village, it is very important to remember about those difficult countries, difficult spots, and try to help them. We are mobilizing all the resources of the neighboring countries, European Union, Organization of Islamic Conference, to help to Afghanistan with this regard. So, humanitarian problems are acute, still acute. So I turned you to completely to other topic.
No, that's an interesting observation, because the world as a provider of solutions, of help, and not just as a place that takes away from countries. Sir Anand, your own thoughts on this vexed problem?
Well, I think that we're talking about two different things. Global village is global village, but the other point relates to business and commerce.
That's part of the global village.
And all those things to do with business and commerce means that business can take place across borders, across the other side of the world. On the hair-raising drive, done very well, I might say, by our driver from Mumbai to Ambi, I'm somebody who likes looking at what motor vehicles are present. And of course, there were Tatas and Marutis and Mahindra vehicles to be seen. But there were also vehicles from Korea, from Japan, from even the UK.
And Germany.
And Germany, of course. We were driving in a German vehicle. That shows, I think, that the modern world has lessened its approach towards borders. And I'm just talking about automotive then, but a New Zealander can today have something go wrong with their computer or their power supply, and they ring up to complain, and the answer will come from someone who is in India or someone who's in the Philippines. I think business has caught on to the idea that the old borders are old hat. But that is something different from a global village.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's true, because we're talking more and more about self-reliance. Even in India, Atmanirbharta is the Prime Minister's slogan. But one last round, and we'll ask you for brief comments, is that in the global village, we have a paradoxical situation when it comes to the movement of people. On the one hand, we're all concerned. I mean, certainly my generation keeps worrying about all your generation getting your education here and then going off to foreign countries and never coming back. In the case, I was in New Zealand a couple of months ago, where I met Sir Anand Satyanand, and there I was told by lots of people, our young people are all migrating to Australia and never coming back. As you pointed out, Rosa, we have Indian students coming to your medical colleges in your country, not yet in Ecuador, Rosalía, but who knows, that may start too. The question is, all that is happening. At the same time, visas are getting more difficult, more restrictive. You have in Britain this entire election hinging on stopping the boats of illegal immigrants coming to England. In America, backlash against migrants from from Mexico, but not all from Mexico, coming through Mexico. Then you've got the problems in the European Union coming from North Africa. So there's all sorts of barriers that people want to throw up to prevent these movements. This paradox, both of countries being anxious about too much movement and other countries trying to throw up the barriers and block them. How do you see all this in building a global village? I know that you believe in values, but this is a practical proposition. These are human values. People should be able to live and flourish where they can, but some would say it's too easy now for people to change countries unless you stop them. What do you do? Where do you come down on this?
Well, as an old functionary of United Nations like you are, maybe you are more qualified to respond this question, but I will try my best. It's a paradox, really it's a paradox. Probably it's much easier to move goods than people.
Yeah.
That's a big paradox. When people move, not only because they are migrants, but they want to visit other countries, they need visas, and they need to have a stamp on the passport. It will be maybe an illusion to have one day the universal citizenship, because the people of the countries, in the use of the sovereignty, has to protect the people of their own country. That's a paradox. In Latin America, we are having now big situations with migrants, not only because a lot of people from Latin America are trying to get United States or Europe, but also because we have our own movements of migrants. Probably some of you heard about the situation of Venezuela. Venezuela has a government that is not handling the possibility to have a normal life inside Venezuela. And for example, my country, being a small country, have 500,000 Venezuelans living in Ecuador now. And 8 million of Venezuelans leave the country in the past less than 10 years. And people is really concerned about what's happening and how is going to deal this moment with the situation of a president that tried to maintain the position and the opposition that for sure won the election. I'm convinced about that they won the election, but the president has the army and the possibility to maintain the position. What's going to happen with all these Venezuelans going around? And the same is happening with countries in the Arab world and the European countries and people from other sides of the continents trying to migrate. not only because of political or war situations, but nowadays also because of global warming. You know exactly what happens with the island countries that feel that they are not safe in their island and they have to migrate. You are going to wait that they are with the water until here to open the possibility of migration? No, we cannot for migrants from the different parts of the world. We have this value and the possibility to be human and the solidarity to offer the others the possibility that we have or the rich countries have. Is it possible? It is possible. If you instigate values to the people, especially to young people, to know that if I ask for respect, you must have the respect for the others. That is the comprehensive world. And I hope United Nations, with the reforms that it has to be done inside United Nations, has to be the door to open this good balance for the world.
Thank you, Rosa.
Maybe.
Wonderful. She's my candidate for next Secretary General of the UN. Rosa, tell us, how do you feel about this migration challenge in the global village?
I think we would leave the future dozens of years under this very intensive cross-flow of migration. It is sort of inevitable because of the open space, information space, because of this traffic of routes open again. I'm afraid that the most difficult it is migration, which will be under the pressure of climate change. That's what you can't stop. This is really, if planet will go up for another 2-3 grades, then you can't stop people living in the most heated areas to other countries. That's what I do believe is the most difficult. Otherwise, every country suffers today from brain drain. We do understand that the press, the media calls for the better life, and people who used to live all right in their homelands, they just go, leave everything and go. They want to see other countries, they want to live, they want to get new experience and so on. But I do understand that this pressure of climate, this is the inevitable and it is the most dangerous.
Thank you very much. And Sir Anand, as a son of 2 generations of migrants, how do you feel about migration at this point in the 21st century?
I think, Dr. Tharoor, that the world is going to live for quite a considerable time yet with the tension between those people, a lot of them young, who wish to travel and travel to other countries, and those governments that wish to make that something that is bound by rules and regulations and restrictions. And I can't for myself see any way through that. And I can end on a happy note in which everything can turn out for the better. I have received a magic carpet ride to come from New Zealand, far away in the Southwest Pacific, to India. But the process all began with my receiving an invitation from the I.I.M.U.N. people. I went to the Indian High Commission in Wellington, dressed in a suit and tie, and I applied because I thought I was coming to a conference for a conference visa. And the official said to me, "Conference visa, does the organization have permission to mount a conference. And I said, no one has said this to me. So there were some feverish emails between myself and my colleague in the I.I.M.U.N. who told me, no, they hadn't applied for a conference visa because there is too much bureaucracy. He said the best way to approach this is to go back tomorrow and just ask for a tourist visa.
There you are.
Which I did, and it was received, it was made overnight. So in all the thicket of difficulties, there are ways through.
There we are. There we are, everyone. We've had a very rich discussion with our three very distinguished panelists. I do want to say, I'm not sure we've resolved the various questions up in the air. Maybe we'll leave it to your generation to find a way out of all the contradictions and paradoxes. But let me tell you about the British writer David Goodhart came up with a very interesting argument that the world is facing an ongoing tussle between the anywheres and the somewheres. The anywheres are the people, like those on the stage now, who are comfortable in any global capital, jet from conference to conference, stay in five-star hotels, can speak and be at ease anywhere in the world. And the somewheres are those who are rooted in one culture, one place, one religion, and often one language. And his argument was that the era of globalization was the dominance of the anywheres, the Davos man I referred to, and that we were heading towards a backlash from and the eventual triumph of the somewheres. And the somewheres were reasserting their rights to be the more authentic representatives of their people. I think this battle is going on. The global village does have fences in it, but it also has, as people have pointed out, a lot of interconnection, a lot of goods and services and ideas and money traveling across. So we're going to have to wait and see, as you grow up to become full-fledged members of this global village, what you make of it and how you change it for the better. Thank you all very much for listening.